fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Well, welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, Mr. Dave, astronaut.
I'm the astronaut now.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
You went up to space for 10 minutes and with all your lady astronaut friends. How was that? Did it wreck your hair like everyone else? Did it just do a number on your...
What there's left of my hair, yes.
Yeah, well, it made it look like you had more hair.
Yeah. Which is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's always a good thing. And I really liked your guys' choice of uniform. Very, very snazzy. Yeah. I don't... Anyway, so here we go. We have an author with us today, and he's got a book out called Thirst. And it's Richard Compson Sater. So thank you for coming on the show, Richard.
My pleasure. Thank you, Al.
So, Richard, what's going on? Like, why would a sane person get into the writing world? Like, what brought you into this world of writing stories?
I think just the need to tell the stories. I've been openly gay now for a long time, and some advice that I got many years ago when I was studying creative writing in college was write what you want to read. And I was having a hard time finding the kind of stories that I wanted to read. And as a younger man and kind of struggling with coming out from the time I was a teenager and not feeling I was fully out even until I was in my mid-30s, I ended up with quite a lot of stories that I wanted to tell. And that's really been my motivation. In my 20s, I joined the military. I enlisted in the Air Force. I spent 3 years enlisted and then was commissioned after 3 years. At the time when I went into the military, I had to lie and say that I wasn't gay. That was back in the days when they could still ask that. When Clinton became president, he instituted the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy as a stopgap, he said, that would eventually lead the way for gay and lesbian people to serve openly. I was in the military for 15 years under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and it was never lifted during my time in the service. And that gave me more ammunition, the notion that I had to hide who I was if I wanted to serve. When I was commissioned, my career field was public relations, and I spent most of my officer career as a photojournalist. So I was always writing stories, mainly feature stories, taking pictures, news stories sometimes, writing speeches and different things like that. So I was always writing, but I wasn't writing the kind of stories I necessarily wanted to read. And since I retired back in 2011, it's hard to believe it's been that long already, but since I retired, I can write those stories now. And Don't Ask, Don't Tell was finally lifted. After I retired, I'm hopeful under the current administration that it doesn't come back. But it kind of gave me the freedom to explore not only military life, but also being gay and being in the military and being middle-aged and older.
Right. There's a lot going on there. But what actually, there's a need to tell stories, and there's stories that you might have in your head and stuff. But what do you think gave you the courage to actually get them published, to write them so that everyone can see them?
I guess the hope that other people would feel the same way, that these would be compelling stories that they too would want to share. Maybe I'm filling a niche that hasn't been filled before. Maybe there are people who are looking for stories about middle-aged gay men, older gay men who have happy endings, who don't end up dead or alone. And I wanted to tell those stories. I feel compelled to put those stories out there and ideally find others who enjoy them.
Well, you said in the military you were doing some journalism. How did you find making that transition from writing nonfiction to writing creative fiction?
It really wasn't that big a jump. I continued to. I actually started writing my first novel, which is called Rank, which is a gay military novel. I started writing it while I was deployed to Afghanistan. And at that time, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still very much in place. This would have been about 2005 or 6, I think. I started writing the story just because I needed a break. We were working 7 days a week. We were working 14, 15-hour days. There was a lot of pressure. It was a combat zone, and I needed a way to escape at the end of the day. And I found that I could write this story that had at the time no intent to show anyone. And it just kept getting longer and longer, and I realized, hey, I've got a novel here. And it took me some years to finish that first one, but I think any kind of writing keeps the machine oiled, whether you're doing a news release or a speech or an article, a feature article, anything that just has you putting your pen to the paper and putting words down and being as creative as you can within whatever restrictions you might have. Certainly in the military, there were plenty. I had to write according to the military specifications for what was considered suitable content and following the ground rules that were established. But writing to me is writing, just as reading is reading. I mean, I feel like I can get as much pleasure out of reading a classic novel, something by, I don't know, Fitzgerald or Faulkner or Mark Twain, or a contemporary thriller, a mystery, even a romance novel. I feel like I'm constantly learning, maybe priming the pump just by reading, seeing what other people are doing. And I find the more I read, the more inspired I am.
So let's talk about the book. Thirst. What is the premise of this story?
Thirst is the story of a bartender named Neil who works at a local country club, and he has a close encounter with a drunken man on the way home from work one time, and they fall into a relationship. The drunken man is named Ranger. Ranger and Neil kind of fall into a romantic relationship. But what Neil comes to realize is that Ranger needs alcohol to prime his pump, as it were, and that he's very amorous after he's had a few drinks, but less so when he's sober. When Ranger is involved in a vehicle accident that totals his truck, he's forced into sobriety, and he grabs a hold of that with both hands and commits his life to and concentration to being sober. And as part of that, he decides that he doesn't want anything to do with his old life. He doesn't want anything more to do with his drinking buddies or with Neil. He's decided that if he can give up drinking, he can give up his romantic partner as well. And so the novel is the working out of their relationships. There's a couple of other there's a subplot involving Neil, the bartender, attempting to reconcile his father and grandfather, who have been at odds for many years. Neil's grandfather is also gay, and his father has had a problem with that for much of his life. And Neil attempts to reconcile his father and grandfather to fairly disastrous results. But the overriding story is between Neil and Ranger. Ranger goes to rather extreme lengths of marrying a woman to prove to himself and everyone else that he's not really gay, and the marriage is a mistake. And so we get to know Ranger's new wife and the interaction, kind of the triangle relationship that develops between Neil and Ranger's wife, and how it all gets resolved in the end. That I decided when I started to write it that Neil and Ranger would end up together. And I hope that's not a spoiler alert. But
now these characters, Neil and Ranger, so did you come up with the characters first or the story first, and you developed the characters to fit in?
The characters really first. I spent about 5 years as a bartender and working at a local country club years ago, and that kind of gave me the setup. I learned intimately how the bar at the locker room worked at the country club where I was employed. The character of Ranger was based very loosely on a man that I had been involved with many years ago who shared some similar characteristics. He'd been a pretty dedicated alcoholic until he was forced to sober up. And the last time that I had been in contact with him, which was a couple decades ago, he was on the verge of divorcing his seventh wife but he was still sober, but he had not ever felt comfortable coming to terms with the fact that he was very likely gay. He just couldn't see himself fitting into that role. So I started with that story. I have a bartender and I have an alcoholic. And I thought, well, that's kind of a unique pairing.
Do you hear your characters when you're writing? Do you have an inner monologue? Is that how you create the dialogue and kind of the internals of the characters, or do you have a different way?
I do. That's a great way to put it. I picture it almost as if it's a movie unrolling in front of me, and I know exactly how they sound. I know how they look, and I know that everybody who reads the book will probably attach a different accent or a different tone of voice to the different characters, and will have a different mental picture of what the characters look like. But I have them in mind, and they're acting out their story in front of me as I'm writing.
Well, if you make a movie out of it, you can always use Dave.
Well, keep that in mind.
He's looking. I mean, his hair is a little messy now that he's back in space.
Yeah.
Can't get, it's a little fuzzy. Yeah.
Space Hair Club for Men.
Yeah. Wow. So it seems like a really important story in a way to you. Like it comes from somewhere deep inside. And with that being said, is there a subtext, or is there something that you want readers to take away from the story, or is this pure entertainment?
I want it to be entertaining. I hope it's more than that. I'm in love with the characters, and I want my readers to be in love with the characters as well. I want them to find them endearing, maybe a little maddening, but ultimately, if not heroic, at least likable. And I want them to be rooting for the characters and rooting for their success and rooting for a happy ending. I hope that the book has something to say about interpersonal relationships, about the family that we're born into and the family that we make. I think that's something that might be particular to gay people, that we have the two families. We're born into one, and then we kind of make our own as we grow up and come out, and we gather people to us who give us the support and the love and the confidence that we need to move ahead. So I hope that Thirst has some messages about the importance of relationships, about the importance of being true to oneself, about forgiveness.
With this book, what do you think it's done for you writing this book, and how do you think it's changed you?
I started writing it at the time. It's been about 7 years ago that I started writing it, and then not too long after I had started writing it, my spouse passed away unexpectedly after an accident, and his death it came right at about the time that the COVID pandemic was hitting, and there were some other things. I had the sewer backed up into my house and just destroyed the whole basement, and having lost my love, and then being forced into the isolation with the pandemic and being alone, it was a long time for me before I was able to get back to writing. And I think it was therapy for me in a way. It gave me something that I could lose myself into, that took me out of the day-to-day, I don't want to say misery, but maybe that's a good word, the day-to-day challenges that I was facing, the grief, the anger, and the sadness, and everything that for not just the passing of my spouse, but everything that had kind of happened all at once. I was still running his business on my own for a few years after he died. I finally sold the business 2 years ago, and with the intent that I finally would be able to concentrate on writing. And that was really my impulse to finish Thirst, contact publisher and find out if anyone was interested. And I contacted Ian Hensel at Rattle and Good Yarns Press, and he was interested right away. That was very gratifying to me, that I was able to present him with something that he liked right off the bat. And it helps heal me in a way, I suppose. I mean, I still grieve, of course, but things are significantly brighter now than they were when I was finishing this, when I was writing this, and so it was therapy for me.
So, what do you think the hardest part of writing is? What's the biggest challenge?
For me, the biggest challenge is letting go, deciding, okay, this is as done as I can make it. I can read through it again, and I can change happy to glad, and I can maybe put a period here instead of a semicolon. But when I reach the point where I can read through it and I can't find anything more to do than tiny little tweaks, then it's time to send it off. Find somebody, send out some queries and see if I can find someone interested in taking it on. And so I think letting go, deciding that it's finished. And the other thing that and I think probably many writers struggle with this as well, is how easy it is to be distracted and procrastinate. I get almost done, and then I start to step back a little bit, think, oh, I'm almost done. I need to push myself across the finish line. So I need to be really cautious that I don't allow myself to get too distracted or with putting off finishing something that I've started.
That's pretty normal. And I don't know how much that really changes as you do more books. Wow. So it's really good. Now, what are you going to do next? Like, what do you got on the burner now?
I'm halfway through two new novels, actually. One is called Dash. It's about two marathon runners. And the relationship there is complicated by a couple of things. One of the characters is married to a woman who's aware that he's gay, but she loves him and she doesn't want to let him go. And then the other is a lot more autobiographical. It's a military story called Scratch, about a man who volunteers to go to Afghanistan for a tour of duty toward the end of the global war on terrorism. And that's very autobiographical, based on my experiences in Afghanistan when I was there. I'm about halfway through both of those, and lately I'm concentrating more on Dash, the one about the two runners.
So military's had a big impact, obviously, and it's influential in your writing here. How do you feel about the whole military and the issues now, and the way it's going with the new administration? Is it kind of tougher, do you think, or what? What do you think?
I think the struggle with gay people serving in the military was overcoming the prejudice that a straight man would claim that he wouldn't feel comfortable working around an openly gay man because the openly gay man might make a pass at him. And my reaction to that is, do you have women that you work beside? And they always say, yes, they do. And I say, do you feel that you can't control yourself, that you would sexually molest them anytime you're at work? And they say, well, no, of course not. And I would counter argue that, well, what makes you think that a gay man would not be able to be just as professional, do his job, and do it as well or better than anyone, where the personal relationships wouldn't become an issue? And frequently they have no response to that. When I was in the service, I became very adept at kind of deflecting potential gay slurs, things like that. And my response when somebody would ask me point blank, are you gay? My rather flippant response was, why? Are you looking for a date? And that would generally, they would step back, kind of deflecting. We worked long and hard for, don't ask, don't tell was a stopgap, and not a particularly effective one. Once the ban was finally, once Don't Ask, Don't Tell was eliminated, it's been almost 14 years now, over 14 years since the ban was eliminated, and I don't recall any scandals that have made the news as far as there being problems, that there's ever been any kind of regret on behalf of the military for permitting LGBT people from serving. My fear is that under the current administration is that there will be backpedaling, there will be that the policy will be rescinded, and they'll be going back to saying that no openly gay person can serve. In the same way that I'm concerned that the Supreme Court will take up gay marriage. The nationwide gay marriage availability will be eliminated entirely or restricted to the states or something like that, which I think will create all sorts of problems. This administration is frightening for a lot of reasons to me. I think there'll be it's very distracting, and I think it works against mission readiness and capability, because it throws something in the mix that doesn't need to be in there. I think that without question, LGBTQ people have proven that they can serve without any issues with morale or harassment or anything like that. And I think maybe that's because we know what it feels like to be discriminated against. And I think one thing that certainly I, as a gay man, have become aware of is being compassionate toward everyone. And I think that having anyone who's been in the closet recognizes that kind of need for that kind of compassion toward everyone. And I'm afraid that this administration has no room for that.
So when you write the book like this, does it sort of, let's say, sway how you're going to write the book, like how sexual you'll get, or how you write the book in itself because of these challenging times, let's say?
I don't think at least at this point, I'm not letting that interfere. Somebody asked me not too long ago how I approached writing scenes involving sex in the novels, and they do have there is, shall we say, adult content in that respect, but I let it rise organically from the story, and it kind of depends on who my narrator is. If in Thirst, for example, Neil is the first person narrator, and Neil is intelligent, he's educated, he's smart, and so all of those things color the way he describes the relationship that develops between him and Ranger. Ranger's very earthy. Ranger's favorite words all have 4 letters, and he's very salty when he speaks. And if he were just describing a sexual encounter, it would be I think it would probably sound kind of like someone very crudely changing a tire on a car. But Neil isn't that way. He's a lot more maybe democratic and a little less blunt. And so I let my characters decide how much detail is appropriate and the language that they would use to describe it. But I think that scenes involving sex have a place in gay fiction. I don't write what I would consider to be erotica, but yes, when my characters are in a relationship together, they do have sex. Again, I try to make it rise organically from the story and not be anything that's simply gratuitous.
You have to leave those. If you want that kind of book, you go buy Dave's. Sorry. I'm terrible.
I'll have to check for that. All right.
I only have one sex scene.
Yeah, and that's with a werewolf. So.
Oh well. Okay.
Yeah, they're actually 10 good demons.
Well, there you go. See. It all.
You're thinking of The Howling.
Yeah. Right. Well, no, nothing. So listen, do you like to have readers interact and contact you and stuff like that? Do you have like social media? Do you have a website? Where do people find Richard?
I do. Thank you for asking. I have my own website, richardcompsonsater.com, and there is a contact form that comes right to my email. I do respond to any email that I get from readers. I always respond. It's been very gratifying. I've been very, very positive. I can be contacted through Amazon as well, Amazon.com. I have a writer page, and there's I think it lists ways to reach out to me through that as well. And so I do. I love hearing from readers who have been impressed, and I would say I would like to hear from readers who are not, find out why.
Yeah, then you can hunt them down.
No. I'm always looking to improve, and so I take criticism in the spirit in which it's offered. And if it's something I can use, I'll take that into account for the next thing I write.
So everyone, the book is Thirst, and our guest is the author of that book, Richard Compson Sater. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Al and Dave. It's been a great pleasure chatting with you both.
Thanks, Richard.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.